Hi, welcome back to High Fantasy Writing. My name is April and I make videos about writing advice that's not really the typical writing advice, at least that I see on YouTube. I kind of focus more on critiquing and being a good critique partner currently, because that's what I feel like I have the most to say about that's unique to everything else out there. There are so many great writing advice YouTube channels out there, but I'm kind of more focusing on my series on how to be a great critique partner. And in this video today, we are going to specifically focus on how to word the edits that you're suggesting to the critique partner that you are critiquing, whose work you are critiquing. So the way that you word your critiques when you're sending them back to the original author can have a massive impact on how they change their story, if they change their story, how they feel about moving forward with the partnership with you, and how they feel about their writing in general. When we are being critique partners, our goal is not to make writers feel bad about themselves, to make writers feel like they're incapable of writing well. We don't want to make them feel like, oh, well, I'm just a terrible writer with our critiques. We are making critiques on their work. So most of these are going to be, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, but you should do this instead. So it is, by nature, critiquing is pointing out the flaws in a story. Absolutely, there is a very important place for pointing out the good things in their work. In critiquing, that's an extremely important aspect of it. But in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the negative stuff that you might come up with your critique and how to broach that with your critique partner to make them want to listen to you. If you word your critiques poorly, that could make the author not want to work with you anymore. It could make them not feel inspired to change their story, but rather scrap it all together. My goal as a critiquer is not to dictate to the author how they should change their story, but rather help the author have a jumping off point in their edits so they can see, okay, here's an aspect of the story that my critique partner has pointed out to me. I feel inspired by their comment to have all of these different alternatives to what I had originally written. So I want to inspire them to write more of their work rather than me coming in and dictating to them, well, this is how I think that the story should go, or this is how I think this should be rewritten. I want the author to feel very empowered by my critique in order to bring that to their work. So it's fully their own work. I'm just helping them cultivate it into the best their work that it can be, rather than trying to insert myself as a co-author. So the way that you word your critiques can be unhelpful and insulting, or they can really inspire the author and make them feel like I can do this, I can change this to make it the best it can be. Because, like I spoke of in my last video about critiquing, this is the author's story. They know it far better than you do. So trying to dictate to them what their change should be isn't always as helpful as helping them get a stepping off point, because they know the themes, they know the story, and that little spark that you give them could put all the puzzle pieces together. The vocabulary that you use in your critique is extremely important. You don't want to say something like, this is a bad way to write, this is stupid, I don't get this, this makes no sense. Things like that, phrases like that, aren't extremely helpful. They're more degrading and bogging people down with the critique rather than building them up. So instead of telling them just scrap the entire scene, it was pointless, useless filler, you can let them know the good parts of the scene, the parts of the scene that you feel like they can incorporate into other aspects of the story, that they can not just delete all of this writing that they've done, but rather let them know that, hey, I see a lot of promise in this. It's just maybe not landing for me the way that the way that maybe you intended it to. So, other than wording, a really important thing to keep in mind when you are doing critiques is to put your own ego aside and to look things up. If you see something in somebody else's manuscript and you think it's wrong, look it up first before you highlight it and say, oh no, you mean this here, or you're using that word wrong. Maybe look it up first before you leave that comment, because you might be the one wrong in the instance. I've had on both sides. I have been critiquing someone's work and seen them use terminology like for a medieval castle, part of a medieval castle, and I had used that same terminology in my story. And so the way they used it was different than the way I had used it. I started writing a comment on their work and was letting them know, like, hey, this actually isn't the proper usage of this word. It's not, what you described isn't actually what this word is. And then I paused. And I said, I've just been assuming that I know what this word means. Maybe I should look it up first. And I looked up the word, and it did not mean what I had thought that it meant. It meant what the author of the work who I was critiquing, it meant what they were using it for. And so I completely deleted that comment and actually included, thank you so much for including this terminology in your work, because I looked it up. I thought you had used it wrong, but it turns out I had been using it wrong this entire time in my work. So I just wanted to let you know that that word in your story actually really helped me with my writing. So even if you think that you are so sure of something, if just look it up. Just to look it up before you say that's not what that is, because you can save yourself a lot of time and energy. You could learn something yourself, and it saves your critique partner from thinking that maybe I shouldn't continue this partnership because they don't even know what these things mean, and they're going to continually tell me that I'm wrong. So, as a critique partner, do your due diligence and make sure that you are correct. Because if you send them incorrect information on their work and then they look it up and see that you were wrong, that's going to make them question whether or not they should even still be working with you. If they look and see your comment about something like that and you're telling them you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, they might say, I don't think I want to work with this person anymore, because they don't even know what this one thing is, or they didn't bother to check to make sure that they were right. They were just so concerned about telling me that I was wrong. And maybe I don't want to work with somebody like that. That's an absolutely legitimate reason to stop being critique partners with somebody, is if they continually tell you that you're writing inaccurate information when really they're the ones who are wrong in the information that they have. So when in doubt, look it up. This is also very important for grammatical things. If your critique partner has asked for you to notate any grammatical issues that you have found in their work, make sure that you're right in your grammar. Because if the person has specifically asked you for grammatical advice, they might just take you at your word. They might assume that you know better than they do, and they might change it in their manuscript and keep doing the thing that you told them to do. And if you're wrong, if that's not actually grammatically correct, then you have taught a young aspiring writer the wrong thing. So just make sure that if you're going to tell somebody that you did this technical thing wrong, you've used the wrong vocabulary, you have used the wrong grammar, make sure that you know what you're talking about before making that edit. Now, off of the technical stuff and more onto the subjective critiques that you might give your critique partner. Something I suggest, if it's you don't want to be so vague in just saying something like, this scene kind of felt meandering. If you want to be a little bit more specific, what I suggest is to give the author multiple examples or options in ways that they can change the scene that you're talking about. So something like if you see them having a description of something in their story and you didn't really like the description, you felt it was maybe a poor description, too vague of a description, it didn't really make it unique in that description, instead of just letting the author know this description is bad, give them a couple of options. First, let them know the emotions or vibe that description first, the way the author has written it, the vibe that gives to the reader. So say they have described the weather and they say, it was a sunny day. And maybe in a reading, you decide to notate that and say, this isn't giving me a lot of description. Instead of saying, this is a boring description, or there's no need to describe this, wording it in a way that's like, just saying that it's a sunny day doesn't really give me much feeling about this scene or this day or the state that the characters are in due to it being a sunny day. So perhaps you can give them a couple of different options and let them know what each option evokes in the story. This can be really helpful for especially new writers who don't have a whole bunch of experience yet and haven't really fleshed out their writing in a way that focuses on descriptions and how powerful those can be. So changing the descriptor of the sun, instead of just saying it was a sunny day, having the descriptor the sun was bright and warm gives a very different feeling to the sun was oppressive and burning. Giving the author a couple of different options so that it jogs in their mind what you actually mean by your comment can be very helpful in helping them have a jumping off point rather than just saying this description's bad. Being more specific with it and giving maybe a couple of options so that they can get an example of what you mean by your comment can be extremely, extremely helpful. I can't tell you how many times I have read a critique on my work and I just kind of look at it and it's so vague that I'm just like, I don't really know what you're telling me right now. All I know is you don't like this chunk right here. I don't know what you don't like about it. I don't know why you don't like it. I don't know how you think that I should change it to make it not be the bad that you feel that it is. So giving some options, being specific with your critiques can absolutely help the author to know what you're saying and give them a jumping off point to fix whatever you think is wrong with the scene. Another layer in the way that you word your critiques is making sure that you are not directly attacking the author for the way that they have written something. So just never ever say, you need to take some writing classes. You need to go and figure out how to write before you send me another piece to critique, or anything insulting like that, saying that this reads like a third grader wrote it or something like that is very demeaning and not helpful in your critiques. So always be mindful that there is another person on the other end of this work, and just don't be cruel about it, even if maybe their writing skills are not as polished as yours are, or as you think maybe they should be if they're sending you something to critique. Instead of wording it as in the author has done something wrong, try to be as constructive as possible. Use kind language, inspiring language, rather than this is bad, you're wrong. Think of yourself as a mentor to this person, even if you are technically peers. You want to be supportive. You want them to be the best author that they can be. And keeping that in mind when you're writing your critiques, instead of, well, I've just got to give them some tough love. Um, the different mindset that you have when you go into a critique, as I've talked about in my critiquing mindsets, will definitely affect the way that the person is able to go forward with their writing. So to recap how to suggest an edit, you want to be careful about your wording to make sure that it is uplifting the author and being constructive, rather than just insulting them and demeaning their writing ability. You want to give them specifics on what you mean by your comment, perhaps give a couple of different options and explain what each option brings to the table for their work. And you want to make sure that if you are letting them know that they have used a vocabulary word wrong, or doing something grammatically wrong, you want to make sure that you are actually correct when you are telling them to change it to whatever other thing you want them to change it to. So keeping those things in mind, I hope will help you be a better critique partner and help you feel a little bit more confident that the critiques that you're sending back are actually helpful, and that the person on the other side is learning something and feels good about their writing and inspired to change their writing to make it the best that it can be. My next video in this little critiquing series is going to be about how to be a courteous critique partner. Kind of all of my videos in this series have touched on this, because it is an extremely important part of being a critique partner, is to be courteous and not an asshole. And so this video is going to dive more into how you should interact with your critique partner at the very beginning of your partnership, and then how that can change and evolve throughout your partnership, and just general guidelines about critiquing, doing it in a reasonable amount of time, things of that sort. So look forward to that. I hope that you have been enjoying my videos so far and they have helped you out. So like, share, comment, give it to somebody who you think this would help, especially if they're starting out in the critiquing world. It can be very daunting when you first set out and you're not quite sure what you should be doing, how you should be doing it. And since I have a little bit of experience under my belt, I definitely would have appreciated this when I started out. So I hope that you appreciate it as well. This is High Fantasy Writing. My name is April, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!